That position is a whole nother story. Wesley So, a brilliant defender, but Magnus, just take his pluses where they come.
Yeah, feels like he's overthinking Magnus Carlsen, maybe a bit frustrated that he doesn't see anything direct. In the end, he, pushes a pawn. So he really wants to fight this game, really wants some advantage, Magnus Carlsen, because this is a bit weakening White's pawn move. Suddenly White's king is vulnerable. Suddenly you leave a bunch of squares unprotected in your own camp, but he's trying to step forward, destabilizing Black's light square bishop. And watch out, that Black king on light squares, if White gets the pawn one square forward to f5, big threats appear. So, okay, the evaluation bar doesn't react. It's not a bad move. It's not kind of a winning move either, but it is asking questions of Wesley. He's just trying to pose practical problems here.
Love that move. And I didn't see it. I wouldn't have played it. I didn't suggest it. But that move is trying to push forward to f5 so that you really control all of the light squares. And if Black tries to stop that at once with, say, the move g6, just to cover the square, instead of putting a pawn on the square, now I think the knight can even go back to g3 at any moment. I'm going to play f5 myself, and I'm shattering your pawn structure on the king's side. So we talk about small pluses. This suddenly becomes a pretty important plus for White, that if Black would be forced to get rid of the g-pawn for White's f-pawn, two isolated pawns remaining in the position for Black, completely unideal.
And another pawn decision that you never want to make to stop this idea of f5 is to go f5 yourself to fix the pawn on that square, because then that bishop on c3 becomes such a strong piece. You can give a check on h5. g6 is impossible anymore. The rook is hanging on h8 and forcing Black to go back to g8, making sure that that rook on h8 is stuck. Fall back with the knight, and now suddenly again Black's playing without most of his army.
Yeah, pretty much the most important piece here for Black to activate is that rook, and now it's never getting out. White could just land a bishop on g6, and Black is pretty much stalemated on the king side for the rest of the game. So this would be a disaster for Wesley So, meaning that his two most natural moves are not feasible right now. Look at Wesley So staring up at the ceiling, looking for inspiration, because suddenly realizing f5 has a flaw in it. That would be a nasty check. g6 also just too loose, too weakening. So you have to allow the white pawn forward, but that's far from ideal. That's suddenly a bit scary. Wesley So maybe didn't see that one coming. We didn't here in the studio. That is a mark of genius from Magnus Carlsen. That's why he's so strong in these queenless type of positions. He's still looking for resources, still looking for threats.
Putting a rook on the d-file was just so natural. And for Magnus, he was spending that time there not because he was thinking of which rook to move. He's thrusting that pawn forward, and he is posing some direct problems. I thought this wouldn't be a direct battle. I thought there would be no confrontation here. And Wesley, and you look at him peering at the board, he's like, I need to buckle down right now. I'm actually trailing on the clock. I spent 2.5 minutes on this turn, and suddenly it's Magnus once again with a lead on time and with a better position.
I mean, I just want to take this moment to think about the last two moves by Magnus. Rook sliding onto d1, rook sliding onto e1, the most natural looking moves in the position, moves that you make in seconds. First, Magnus retreats with that bishop, making everyone think that eventually he will slide in with the rook, go in with the knight, and then he pushes this f2 pawn to f4. Again, Magnus just doing Magnus things in endgame, creating magic out of nowhere, out of a place where you'd feel it never exists, forcing Wesley to take some big decisions right now, at least putting him under pressure to solve. He gives up a bishop pair. And David, I see your expression. You do not like Wesley's last move.
I do have a bias towards the bishop pair, especially in an open position like this, but it feels like Wesley's just giving Magnus a helping hand. We were talking about White having to take 2-3 moves to set up ideas of jumping in with the white knight, nabbing the bishop pair. Wesley's just giving it for free to Magnus Carlsen right now, and yes, the black rook is active. Yes, the black rook actually covers the 5th rank, stopping White's pawn from landing on f5, stopping any checks, but what's left on the board? It's not about what's off the board, it's what's left, and White's 2 bishops have great potential. Black's knight doesn't have any stable squares to sit on, cannot really compete right now with the bishops. Long term as well, I think this is just going to favor White. There might be no immediate knockout, but long term now, Wesley is going to be suffering.
And Wesley down to nearly 3 minutes at this stage. And maybe he can try to improve his knight, jump out to b6. He does just that. But at any moment, that dark square bishop for White, which has no counterpart, can slide forward to d4, take that knight if it ever becomes a problem. And that f5 pawn push that we thought might occur, it could happen at any moment. So for Wesley, he's kind of holding on to key squares, but you could see his pieces getting dislodged, and then Magnus will be able to press forward.
Yeah, once again, bishop e2, f4. I think these are exactly the kind of moves that makes Magnus Carlsen the best player in the world, or the best player in the world in general, but the greatest of all times when it comes to endgames. And we see that bishop has landed on d4, putting pressure on that rook. Wesley immediately slides it to a5, so provoking Magnus to make some pawn decisions on the queen side. a3, but that rook on a5, to me, it looks misplaced. You have to be sure that you've gone all the way there, but you better be able to find a way back.
Yeah, Black's rook could just be feeling silly on that square, especially if it later gets kicked around even further by White's pawns, White's bishops. Wesley, so a bit of a shake of the head. He looks away from the board. Remember, in one of the previous games, he was doing this all the time, and then he won. So let's not trust Wesley's body language too much, but I think internally he is a bit upset that this position is spiraling slightly out of control. It's definitely Magnus trying to make things happen, dictating the pace of this game. And I don't know if Magnus will even react to these pawn pushes. White can start improving pieces as well.
But Magnus is down to 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and the clock is ticking. So if he does not find the energetic reply... Speaking of energetic replies, he gives up the a2 pawn on the spot. I think he smells blood right now. And if Wesley takes this pawn with his rook, that bishop is going to go all the way up to the h5 square with check. He's going to push his pawn to f5. He's just using his pieces, his pawns, his battering rams. He doesn't care about that pawn on a2.
And look at Wesley right now, exhaling violently there. He cannot take that pawn. If Black takes that pawn with his rook, he loses the game. It is poisoned right now. He has to try and coordinate his pieces yet again, keep the black rook on the 5th rank. The black rook has too many things to guard. He has to re-centralize it, but it's just come from that side of the board. It's so hard psychologically to correct your own mistake, to lose a move for free, essentially. He has to bring the black rook back to the center.
But he has to lose the move. He could be losing on the spot if he went pawn hunting. He puts the rook back on d5, and Wesley realizes what a mistake he made on that last move, sliding the rook to the edge of the board. Now the bishop can step in with tempo to f3, further pursuing that black rook. And if White is able to get control of the d file, be the winner of that open d line, that would make Wesley's endgame play even more difficult. Bishop h5 will always be a threat. You start with bishop f3 and ask bigger questions to the rook.
The rook is going to be kicked about, and it's going to have to step back towards the black camp. And for Magnus, sometimes you push pawns and you regret it because they become loose or overextended. Here, you're happy to get those pawns forward. Whoa! Wesley has rook to b5, and the engine's going through the roof. That was another blunder.
The rook is just trapped on this square. Magnus can close a cage around this rook. I think the most natural move in the position as well. White's dark square bishop just slides into c5, cutting off the rook's access to the 5th rank. It's caught in a cage on its own, trapped by a bishop and pawn, and that rook will fall off the board.
Magnus could wrap up match victory and the Champions Chess Tour final, and he finds it. The black rook on b5 is trapped. He had to fight against the threats of a4. He steps in with the knight to try and grab that bishop on c5. But now that check on h5 that we were earlier alluding to, that's a square that isn't defended anymore. Bishop h5, f5 are these ideas that are possible right now.
You could go for that. You could just drop the bishop back to e2 and say, give me your rook, because he didn't sacrifice the rook. He got his rook trapped, and he's going to regret it. So he's trying to give up his rook for the dark square bishop, maybe get a pawn in return. But I think that for Wesley So here, he is hoping that some tactics will work out his favor with a knight c3 jump, things of that nature. I don't actually believe that it should pan out, and Magnus now, he's about to retreat the bishop.
And he's so indecisive. And then he finally plays bishop to e2. Now, under a minute, he goes for material, and Wesley, jumping in to pick up the other bishop, has to give a check because the knight would have taken the bishop. There was a skewer on c4.
Yeah, and now jumping out the way with a check has meant that the white bishop for now is out of the eye line of the black knight. White's rook can save itself by gaining time against black's knight. Wesley, he's trying to hold things together with tactics, but they don't work. We see the evaluation bar, it's through the roof. Magnus Carlsen will win. If he finds this move, he hits the black knight. No good squares for this knight. If it moves, White can save his bishop. Magnus Carlsen now should be winning. The bishop jumps in. This is a skewer on the white rooks.
So many pieces are under attack, the bishop on h5 as well. But I think you could throw in a check, bring your rook forward in the position. But many loose pieces, he does deliver that check. And Wesley's king goes forward rather than back. You didn't want to have your king in the last rank. There would have been a skewer. Can Magnus bring his rook back with another check, and he's up in exchange.
Yeah, the other white rook will save itself. I think we might be seeing the last few moves of the 2023 Champions Chess Tour. Magnus Carlsen will save his remaining rook on f1, swing it across. Black's knight, black's bishop are skewered. Any moment now, we need to see both players. We might see a handshake.
And we see Magnus, he continues. The knight and the rook are lined up. Magnus under 20 seconds, but it's going to be enough. Wesley, is he about to give up?
It's hopeless. Nothing to do. Look at the black pieces. One of them will drop off, and he's trying one or two final tricks here, Wesley. But look at this. Both pieces forked.
That's
And
it.
that's it. Magnus Carlsen does it. We have a winner. It is him. It was always going to be him. Magnus Carlsen, the undisputed king of speed chess, wins the Champions Chess Tour Finals.
And you hear Wesley say something towards Magnus.
94, it's
Oh yeah.
slightly 90 something.
He's asking him about the theory.
Play of 6 minutes.
That's the tempo.
Yeah, they were discussing their opening. It's all about the chess for these guys, but relief on Magnus Carlsen's face. We saw it. Suddenly a smile, and he deserves every moment. Handshake there from Judith, our arbiter.